Portugal. Retirees dream of spending the rest of their life there for a good reason.
It's a beautiful country. It's amazing all the things that you can do and go in when you're living in there, but it's not for everybody.
Yeah, it's been on the top 10 list for, God, before we started looking. And when we actually went there, we saw and met lots of people who'd been there for years and loved it. And yet, about half the people who do move there, retire there, end up leaving for various reasons. And we're part of that group.
Yes, and with this video, we want to share with you what was our reasons to decide to leave Portugal.
Yeah, along with some of the information about Portugal, what it's like to actually live there, because we spent nearly 6 months traveling there, and then got our visa and got residency, moved there, got an apartment, started living the life, and there were a lot of great things, but in the end, it wasn't for us. So the most important thing that probably comes to mind when people think about Portugal and why a lot of retirees from Northern Europe and North America go there is,
The weather.
yeah, and it's spectacular in a lot of ways. You have to think about Portugal, though. It is the far southwestern corner of Europe. It is essentially, if you're like me from the west coast of the United States, it's very similar to that. You have up north, you have Porto, the northern regions. It's very much like the Pacific Northwest where I grew up. Um, Rainy a lot of the year, but stunningly beautiful because of all that rain. And you get these great hillsides and rivers and all these activities. But the weather is kind of rough in the wintertime and even into the spring.
Yeah.
But anyway, so weather-wise, they say 300 days a year of sun down in the Algarve where we lived. You don't really get that. It is not universally warm. The shoulder seasons are gorgeous. Of course, that's most of the world. The shoulder seasons are warm, but winter is,
It's really, really cold.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
colder than we wanted it to be. It's a lot of 50s and rain and overcast, and it drags on a bit. So not as nice as you would think.
But I wanna add something to that, and it's unfortunately, I don't know if it was our luck, that weather is being changing a lot everywhere. So maybe that's part of that.
Yeah, I think so. And that's one of the things you deal with when you relocate away from where you're used to. But heck, even where I used to live, the weather isn't what the weather used to be. But the Algarve, these hot summers, but the hot summers bring most of Europe, it seems like, come there for their holidays. So everything is overcrowded. It gets a little crazy. Traffic is, they're not built for that kind of traffic.
Insane. Oh my
So
God. Yeah.
weather-wise, it's beautiful, but it's not the place you probably want to be in the high season. You tend to end up traveling. So again, weather is beautiful parts of the year, but like every place, nowhere is perfect.
Number two, the cultural and people. Portugal is a very family oriented,
Mhm.
families first. They're most of the time and most of the weekends, they spend the entire weekend together.
Mhm.
And I really love and admire that.
Yeah, and it's really, we're not negative or positive on it because it's just different from growing up in the US where it's the individual, your rights, your responsibilities, everything's about you, and you get over to Europe and it's very much a more collective, more community driven, family driven environment. You've heard about it. It's real. When you spend time in a place like Portugal or Spain or France or whatever, you will just see people spend a lot more time outdoors interacting. And as you said, you go to the beach and its entire family groups are there together on the weekends. When they're not working, they're taking advantage of living in a place like that when the weather cooperates. But at night, just the evenings out, seeing families together is really is very pleasant and not something that we saw in all the places we lived back
Exactly.
in the
And
States.
for me, being a Colombian, which our country is a lot like that,
Mhm.
family first, and we do almost everything together. I love that part.
Yeah. The other thing we loved about Portugal that you need to know if you want to go a place like that is if you haven't been to Europe much or you haven't actually lived in Europe. Now, if you go over there on vacation, you stay in a hotel, you eat out at restaurants, you don't really experience the go to the local market, buy what's fresh, cook, at home, eat local. It's a different type of feeling. So just be prepared. If you're going to live there, you're going to, shop almost every day. You're going to eat and cook and do what's fresh and,
Mhm.
the fresh foods. And just, it's a different style of life. Speaking of, another part of that life is just it seems much more relaxed, less stressed.
A
Um,
lot less stress. Yeah.
Now I know the people who have jobs and are working away stress about their jobs and all that, but overall the feeling is not as hurried and rushed.
Hmm.
So the next one is the slower pace of life. Kind of feeds off of what I was just saying.
Yes. They really take their time for everything.
Mhm.
So for
Good
people
and bad.
for people who like in Colombia, we are like that. But when I moved to the States, you get used to that go, 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 go all the time.
Mhm.
So when you go back, or when we moved to Portugal, that was kind of shocking.
Mhm.
And it was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I really don't like
We
this.
really struggle with when we were first there about the long meals. It takes a while to get your drink. It takes a while to get your food. Getting a second helping, second drink or whatever. It takes a while. You really have to kind of initiate that, and flag them down. But you also just learn to slow down. You savor your food. You savor your meal. You savor the
Mhm.
conversation. You just really take your time with stuff. The walks are longer and slower. You're not out power walking to get your exercise in 30 minutes. You're out taking a 2 mile stroll along the beach, or through the old town. And it really takes a while to unplug and reset your
Mhm.
perspective on those things.
Yep.
But once you do, it's really hard going, then off to a big city where everything is rushed again.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, you can notice the big difference in that.
Yeah. And you
Mhm.
just, you learn. Things take time. You take your time to do stuff, whether it's, grocery shopping. Heaven forbid you want to run into the store and grab two or three things, you might be standing in line forever. You might have a birthday while you're waiting to get checked out just because they're talking and having life.
Yes, exactly. Especially with the old ladies, they start a conversation and everybody's waiting. But anyway, you need to make sure that you're okay with that because it can be annoying.
So, number four, the language. Guess what? They speak Portuguese in Portugal. They don't speak Spanish. They don't want to speak Spanish for those
Oh
native
no,
speakers.
actually, if you speak Spanish to them, they can get upset
Yeah, there's quite
because
the rivalry, Spain and
something
Portugal.
in there, they don't like each other.
Yeah.
So
But Portuguese is similar to Spanish. So, those of you who actually speak the other language, you understood pretty well.
I understand almost everything. After a year living in there, the trying to talk and speak with them. First, they don't have the patience to wait for you to say whatever you want to say. And second, they also want to practice their English. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit difficult for you as a foreign person to learn the language.
Yeah, I was going to say learning language is very difficult. We tried, we did take classes. We failed ourselves out of the classes because it was just not working. Um, but the great thing is, of course, English is the default language for the world. And in Europe, they've been teaching English for a generation or two. So I think it's over 80% of the people in Portugal speak some amount of English, and almost everybody understands a little bit. And now with the phone and Google Translate, you can really just, you speak into it and it'll translate for you, and it works 99% of the time. So really not hard. And yeah, as I said, 80+% are speaking English.
Now, the number five.
The bureaucracy.
Exactly. He said it because I cannot pronounce that word.
Yeah. Portugal is legendary for its bureaucracy for a reason.
Hmm.
Everything takes forever. I don't care if it's the post office, the driver's license, the visas, everything. If you know the expression, a Rube Goldberg machine, which is essentially the most complicated way to do a simple task, that seems to be who designed the Portuguese bureaucracy. And the best part, of course, is every time they change government, they change all the rules.
Hmm.
We happened to be caught by that. We were in the middle of our visa process, and they literally rid of their immigration department and farmed out their tasks to other groups who then had their own websites and all that didn't support what you were trying to do. But overall, don't expect anything to happen first time you try it. Don't expect anything to be right. You're going to mess up paperwork. If you have clipped a corner on a photocopy, they're going to make you go get a new photocopy. But guess what? They'll point you to the Kinko's type place
Hmm.
downstairs that takes care of it for you, and they don't overcharge you a fortune. People are generally helpful, but the rules are very strict. Just stuff like that. It is bureaucratic. Be prepared for it. But it's also still one of the easiest countries to get a residency visa in. You just have to follow a lot of the rules. Some of them will drive you nuts, especially if you're still thinking like an American, like I'm paying you. You should be good at this. It should be fast. It should be easy. It's not going to be.
Yeah.
In fact, we had friends in the expat community who had been waiting almost 2 years after doing the whole DMV thing to get their Portuguese license. They hadn't received their license
Hmm. And things like that.
yet.
Yeah, things
It's
that
just,
we really don't
yeah.
understand.
So, number six is the food. Mostly, I think it's the food is amazing, but be adventurous because the nice thing is it's still after inflation and everything else, fairly inexpensive
Hmm.
to eat out there. You can go to the local restaurants and eat for, you know, the $5 to $10, plate of the day and, try something you haven't tried before.
Hmm.
For $20 per person, you can eat an amazing meal everywhere outside the major cities, the main tourist zones. You can just,
Hmm.
get stuff. And then, of course, there are Michelin star restaurants all over the place, throughout the country where you can try amazing food.
Hmm.
Though I tend to find that tastes like all the food everywhere else from Michelin star restaurants. They're great, but they're similar. Eat local, enjoy it. Again, the farmers markets are oh, just tremendous because you are getting stuff that is being grown that season. It's fresh. It hasn't been sitting in a trailer for 6 months, and gas to
Mm.
make look pretty. It's real
Yeah.
food. So stuff tastes like what you want it to taste like, and you get just getting a salad is amazing because the lettuce has flavor, the cucumbers have flavor, the tomatoes are
Ah, the
unbelievable, the
avocados.
avocados, everything just tastes so good because it's actually picked probably that day or last night at worst. So yeah, the other part about eating there is it is European, it is that Spanish, Portuguese, Greek, where lunch is late, dinner, breakfast is small, lunch is late, and dinner is really late, but usually fairly small. That's just the reality of life. If you want to go out and eat at 5:30 or 6, you're going to be the only one there, except a
Hmm.
few other expats.
If
Um,
the restaurant is open.
and that's you're going to have a very limited selection of food of
Mhm.
restaurants to pick from. A lot of places, their first eating is at 6:30 or 7.
Mhm.
It takes them a while to get everything going. So you might sit for 30 minutes with your bottle of wine before you get bread on the table. Um,
The good thing about that is
is
the
the
wine is cheap.
yeah,
So
and
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 delicious.
and absolutely phenomenal wine. But yes, thank God,
Yeah.
you can get a bottle of wine for a few bucks and no problem.
Mhm.
So on to number seven. This is something that was one of the main drivers why we left
Mhm.
is the taxes. They have a progressive tax system, but there is no deductible. You start paying taxes from the first dollar, and pretty much everything other than when withdrawals from your savings account is taxed. All capital gains is taxed, withdrawals from your IRA are taxed, Social Security is taxed. It all adds up. And if you think you're going to live on $100,000 a year, you're going to be paying a big chunk of change in taxes. So make sure you look into it.
Mhm.
We had a very small budget, and when we were trying to live under $5,000 a month, and just the withdrawals on that were going to cost us $5,000, or the taxes were going to cost us another $5,000 a year in Portuguese taxes for withdrawing that money from our retirement account. And that's not counting what the US does charge us, et cetera. And then when Social Security starts, again, if that's
Mhm.
additive to how much you're spending, it adds up quickly. Now, they used to have a regime for retirees called the NHR program that got you 10% flat tax for 10 years.
Mhm.
We qualified under it, but that was one of the things that changed and didn't change and then was unchanged and rechanged. And by the time they figured out that yes, we're going to honor the fact that you got here in time for the NHR, we'd already decided to leave because that tax bill would have doubled.
It wasn't certain that they're going to honor that. It
Mhm.
was kind of in the air. So we don't want to take the risk
Yeah.
because after you say yes, you have to pay it. What else you gonna do?
Yeah, we were
So
looking at apartments for the next year, and that would have got us into the next tax year. And so if we didn't leave by the end of the year and give up our residency, we would have been hit with that tax bill. And next big one we just mentioned, housing.
yes, the housing. We decide that it's affordable for us to
Mhm.
live in that budget. But after a year, the prices were going
Oh,
crazy, and we start to look for another apartments. But the things where we're getting for the amount of money we were paying or we can pay, it was insane.
yeah.
So what I mean insane, it was this big and this expensive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. The value proposition got flipped on its head. Now, again, compared to the US where we were living, it's a it went from being half as much when we first got there or first started looking to maybe a 30% discount by the time we actually signed our first lease. And we got very lucky to get the apartment we did. It
oh my
was
God, yeah.
way underpriced because it was their first rental. Overall, Portugal is not the bargain it used to be. It's also still a bargain compared to the US. So if you can keep your US budget for housing, you'll do fine. You
Mhm.
can get great places. Now, if you're interested in buying, I will warn you, Portugal is not easy. They do have a lot of rules. Go back to that section on bureaucracy. um, you will definitely need a lawyer. You will definitely have to cover your backside. Be very wary about putting a bunch of money down until you actually have the signed contract and everything's official. I would probably just go ahead and get a mortgage and then pay off the mortgage if you really want to.
Mhm.
Cash buyer will help you, but again, the headaches are legendary over there. So take your time.
Yes, and on
Oh,
top of that, we have a friends who buy a house, and then they lose the money that they put it on, and they don't get a house.
yeah.
All because the rules, the government rules, say that they cannot have the house.
And finally, as we kind of talked about, it's no longer as cheap as it used to be. I would say Portugal used to be seen as half the price of living in a mid to major US city, and now it's a nice discount, but again, with all the other costs on top of it. Now, one of the things that is not cheap in anywhere in Europe, but especially in Portugal, is gasoline. So,
Oof, yeah.
yeah, you're talking $7 and $8 gallon gas normally, and that's
Hmm.
not even during spikes. So, driving, the cars are small, so they're more fuel efficient. Electric cars are very popular, becoming more
Hmm.
popular, hybrid cars. So, we bought an electric. It was great. If we'd had our own place to plug in, it would be even nicer to not have to go to the supercharger every time we needed to charge up. Down in the Algarve public infrastructure, the public transit's kind of hit and miss, mostly miss. Now, if you're in Lisbon, you don't need a car. Don't get a car.
Hmm.
Porto, you really don't need a car until you want to leave town, so you can rent it when you need it. But again, Algarve, where most of us go because we want that warm weather beach lifestyle,
Hmm.
you're probably going to end up with a car.
Hmm.
Anyway, so from a cost perspective, housing, as we said, used to be half of what we were paying in the US. Now it's maybe a 20-30% discount. It's nice, but utilities there are cheaper than the US, but you use a lot more because they don't believe in insulation. So you end up spending a lot more for electricity or gas for your heating and stuff like that
Hmm.
relative. So your savings is really maybe 20-30% if you want to stay in those prime areas. If you're willing to move out a little bit from the city, go to one of the smaller towns, which are beautiful in their own ways, and you just deal with the drive down into the city, you can save a bit more on your housing.
Hmm.
Food, as we said, you can eat out for very good value. Still not cheap, but it is good value. I mean, this is coming from people who have been in Southeast Asia and South America over the last few years, and we've seen the changes.
Hmm.
But going out to groceries used to be really inexpensive. Now it's still a nice savings.
And I always recommend to go to the farmers market because there is where the real savings you're gonna get.
Yeah,
And going to the store is affordable, yes, but no, the
yeah,
difference in the prices are big
yeah,
in
and
those two.
yeah, local bakeries on every block. Bread is
Mhm.
50, 70, 80 cents for a baguette or a small loaf. You can get pastries for cheap. It's relatively, I mean, it's one of the things that's amazing. We have farmers markets in the States, but everything is twice the price in the store.
Yeah,
Over there, it's
I
half the
don't know.
price of the store. So you can save by definitely eating local, shopping local. There's some great value in there, and it's, as we said, just healthier and cleaner and great tasting.
Hmm.
Food overall, I think, is a good value, but it's not what it used to be. Now there is a website, we mentioned it before in other videos, but it's called Numbeo,
Hmm.
and it does gives you the current pricing in any city pretty much in the world, or any decent sized city in the world, and it has this little thing you can click to compare it, so you can compare, where you currently live to a place in Portugal, whether you're picking Lisbon or someplace in the Algarve, like we lived in Portimao, and you can see that it'll say it's 30% cheaper, 40% cheaper for each of these different line items. And it's really helpful to kind of set your mind around a budget. I would add an extra 15-20% to the numbers they give you, just because some of their data is a little outdated, but
Hmm.
it does give you a perspective. And when I did it today and looked again, it was about 25 to 30% cheaper to live in Portimao than in Denver. Your mileage will vary depending on where you're coming from and
How many people?
how many people and how
Hmm.
much you spend on your apartment or your house, because that's the biggest driver of costs.
Yes.
Those are our reasons. The main reason we left.
I
Oh,
think I would like to add one more, and is the cost of medical service
yes.
is amazing. That is one of the probably the most important, especially in our age, because
Sure seems like it.
we get we getting old. I've been having a lot of medical issues here and there, and it was a blessing to have high service with, I mean, such a small price.
And we're not talking the public healthcare system. We never actually got to the point where we got our health cards for the
Mhm.
public system.
Yeah.
We did go there once in an emergency situation, and I wouldn't go there by choice, though they, from an accident trauma situation, apparently they have world class trauma. But for regular health care and everything else, we used the private hospitals, and we were uninsured. We had our travel insurance, and
Mhm.
so we could get reimbursed for things. But the cost of getting service was a fraction
Mhm.
of the US. I mean, in certain situations, 10% of the cost of what it would cost in the US. Other times it was, half or less. I mean, seeing a doctor is $30, $40.
Yeah.
Seeing a specialist might be $60.
Mhm.
No copays, no co-insurance, none of this stuff. Just show up, get an appointment, see a doctor, and they'll actually take time and talk to you about more than one thing. And
And that's another thing
yeah,
that I was going to mention. It is not just, even if you go for emergency, they will take care of that, and they will ask you what else you're suffering,
yeah,
or what other issues you're having, and you can share with them and other things that you have some concerns.
yeah.
But anyway, that is priceless, because you're just paying for one appointment.
Yeah. But that's the thing with medical tourism, and we've done it in every area of the world we've been to. We've either had an issue where we need emergency or urgent care, or we've had to see doctors or chosen to see doctors in other countries. And if you don't realize how broken the US system is, let me just tell you, you can go anywhere in the world, get first class care at a fraction of the price. So if I had anything that was going to be expensive to do in the US that wasn't an emergency, I'd be looking for someplace else to go and just pay for it out of pocket, or, see if your healthcare coverage will help you out on that. Because, a lot of these companies are international, and they might be very happy to help you go to another country and get your, hip replacement or whatever done, and at a fraction of the price.
Mhm.
Our 2 cents. But again, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is both, hopefully informing you about what life is like in Portugal,
Mhm.
why people choose it, why it is a wonderful, amazing country,
It is.
and why we left.
Mhm.
Because realistically, the short answer was we weren't ready to be expats living in a single place. And then as the costs kept going up,
Mhm.
our travel budget to go see the rest of Europe kept shrinking. And what we realized is we were now paying more to live in Europe than we would to live out of our suitcase all over the world. And so that's where Retire Everywhere came from. We thank you for watching the video.
Thank you for watching.
Really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe.
And please, if you have any questions, we are here to answer.
So thank you again. Happy travels.
Bye.